I'm Mel Stewart, and this is a GMM Podcast. Joining me today, Sam Barany, the Executive Director of the College Swimming and Diving Coaches Association of America, here to unpack the dramatic changes at the NCAA D1 Swimming and Diving Championships. Change was necessary because college swimming and diving is under threat. Now that change is here, there's been a lot of pushback, fear, even anger, a lot of anger. Sam talks about the process of how we've gotten to this change, what we hope to accomplish, and she's even committed to disclosing and sharing the metrics after the championship event happens to let us know if we've met our goals, if we're tracking on our mission. I hope you like this conversation. We're going to have Sam back on a few more times this season and post NCAA Championships. Sam Barany. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
You know what? Right out of the gate, I should say this. SwimSwam has not had a close relationship with the College Swimming Coaches Association. And I'm kind of proud of the fact that you and I have been trying to build that bridge and build that relationship so that we can better understand who you are and what's going on with the College Swimming Coaches Association and how it can be an organization for change and a positive change in swimming.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We haven't. I would say, admittedly, to your point, we haven't had a really close relationship, but frankly, we need as many people coming together as possible right now. And so we're excited to build on this and lean on you guys to help share what's happening in the college space specifically.
For anybody out there that might not know who the College Swimming Coaches Association is, let's begin there. What is the CSCAA?
Yeah, I think that's probably the right place to start, Mel. Just assume that not everybody who's listening knows who the CSCAA is. The College Swimming and Diving Coaches Association is the coaches association that's specifically dedicated to our college swimming and diving coaches and programs. So think NAIA, community college, division colleges, or community colleges, junior colleges, but divisions 1, 2, and 3. And so we represent the whole gamut of college swimming and diving. And our mission is to protect, preserve, and expand college swimming and diving opportunities. So the thing I would want people to know about the CSCAA is that it is a small but strong coaches association. We work on behalf of our coaches and we shift with the environment. So we are able to understand the landscape or the temperature of college athletics, and we are able to move our efforts to be able to meet our mission of protect, preserve, and expand.
There's something people need to be aware of. And there are pillars in the aquatic market, starting with World Aquatics, which is under the International Olympic Committee, or USA Swimming under the USOPC. These are large, well-funded organizations. College Swimming Coaches Association of America is small, is relatively small. And I don't want to say how small, but I want to put it into context. It's on par with, or maybe a little smaller than the American Swimming Coaches Association. These are member-based organizations that fight for funding, fight for support, so that the people can come together and have a voice and have a say and have some agency within their community. So if you think that Sam is this head of this monolithic organization, that's not true. This is very much so about advocacy. Just wanted to get that out of the gate. College swimming has been, let's just say it's been under threat. We've lived in a state of fear. A lot of people fear that college swimming could go away entirely. To help me understand the threat to the system, can you put that into context?
Yeah, I think I can try to do that for you. And I think to your last point around the organization, who we are, yeah, I think a lot of people think of us in a context that's similar to ASCA, and they've got a strong place and a strong voice for sure. If you know the NCAA or the college athletics system, every sport in the NCAA has association. So football, straight through all of our Olympic sports and our emerging sports, think rugby, think equestrian. So we are that space for college swimming and diving. And we can do a lot of things, right? We can do recognitions and professional development events, but advocacy is at the forefront of what we do. And we are not the NCAA, but we do have a close relationship with the NCAA. And as you just mentioned, the landscape of college athletics is under unprecedented pressure that we've not experienced in the past. And swimming and diving, and frankly, all Olympic sports are at risk. I think the threats are immediate. They're tangible. Since the House settlement was announced, just for a point of reference, College Division I has lost 40 programs. So that's 1,000 opportunities that have been removed. This Cal Poly is one of them. Loyola Marymount is one of them. But that also doesn't account for loss of roster spots, budgets, scholarships, salaries, staffing. And so the losses are real. And quite frankly, as we sit in meetings with people who are trying to estimate the aftermath of the space we're in, we've heard up to 100,000 opportunities could be lost. So if you really think about that, 100,000 opportunities lost in college athletics, if that's a gross overstatement, even by 75 or 80%, Mel, that's 20 or 25,000 student athlete opportunities taken off the table. That's about how many athletes we have swimming in college or diving in college. And so I think we all need to understand that change is not for change's sake, but it's really trying to position our sport for long-term growth and sustainability. The CSCAA is, as I mentioned, we move with the times and we understand the pressures in the room. And so we have developed a two-pronged strategic approach to how do we work in these unprecedented times to make sure swimming and diving is stronger than it's ever been, healthier than it's ever been. The first prong is congressional advocacy, right? We need to be influencing people in Washington, D.C. to understand what's at stake if opportunities are lost, and make sure that if anything is passed, any bill is written, that there are provisions for Olympic sports, protections for Olympic sports. That's critical. It's ambitious, but it's palatable on the left and the right. And our work in the House or the Senate or in the White House has actually been really well received. The second prong, and I think this is where it's going to get to the heart of the discussion today, is around building a stronger swimming and diving product than we've ever had before. And so, we need to make sure while we're doing this work in Washington, D.C., we also need to increase the value and the visibility of swimming and diving. So our goal is really clear here. We need to make sure that swimming and diving stands out and that it's moving in a positive trajectory. We need to make sure that our value systems have some level of alignment with the value system of ADs and decision makers on campus. And we need to illustrate a willingness to evolve and become a high return, high impact sport that's worth investing for the long term. This is how we do that. And the proposal that we're going to talk about today, there are some strategic strikes in there to try to help with that, but it's just one of many of the pieces of this pie to strengthen the sport as a whole.
Let's just stick a pin in something right now. You said 40 programs lost, and Cal Poly's been one of the most visible. It's been very recent. It hurt, but it was a lot of emotion driving it. I don't remember how much money they raised. It was like million,
like 9 million.
Yeah, it was close to 10, and it was like, hey guys, if the 9 million feels like it should be enough to get this ball rolling, I think we could have gotten to the benchmark that they wanted to save the program, and it's like, no. Chopped it.
Well, it's a whole lot easier to save a program and put protective measures in place than it is to bring a program back. It's going to cost about $20 million to bring a program back that's been eliminated. So if we can put strategic measures in place to secure the foundation of our sport, we are obligated to do that. We don't have a top without a base,
20 million. So is this internal research? We know this? It's like if I've lost a big college program, price tag's 20 million. You want to endow swimming, protect swimming into the future, $20 million?
Well, I think, if you're going to endow it's more, right? Because you've got to be able to, but what they're looking for is a way to ensure that they can, especially on the men's side, by the way, if you're going to bring back a men's program, usually that comes with a caveat that you've got to bring a women's program back in addition to it. So that's just general markings. But they want most ADs, when they say, here is the price tag to bring back a program, they're talking all in. They're looking for salaries and benefits and operation costs and travel costs and all of the things that external costs, think academic advising and nutrition, but it's an all-in cost. And that doesn't equate to what their expenses are annually, but that's the cost to put it back on the table that we've seen. And that's just not unique to swimming. I mean, we can look at examples of that with other sports that have been dropped and their benchmarks for bringing programs back. But I think the bottom line is we need to do the work on the front end.
I want to get nerdy, get deep in the weeds on the finances of 20 million and how much money that throws off and what it means. That sounds like another podcast you and I are going to have because I would love to know what that data looks like. It's great if every single university knows, hey, here's the number, this is what we have to chase, and this is why. Because I'm looking at 20 million going, that's going to throw off $800K a year without hurting that $20 million nut, keeping it in place. So, because I'm always looking at how do you have a financial nut that throws off cash, and what are your operating expenses, all in, coaches, travel, everything to keep a program going. So we're going to save that for another podcast.
That's it.
Much of what I interface with this topic is through the SwimSwam platform and what I see on social and when I in conversations with friends, but mostly through SwimSwam editorial. And it's, we lost 40 programs. Have we picked up programs? Because every so often I see reports on SwimSwam and it's like, we're picking up programs. We lost 40. How many have we picked up?
So when I say we've lost 40 programs, that's in Division I for Olympic sports, right? We've lost some specific to swimming. The numbers are different, but we're looking at this as a whole issue of where Olympic sports and women's sports, how can we move the needle congressionally? How can we make sure that we're doing the work in-house with swimming and diving specifically? Yeah, we picked up St. Mary's for sure on men's and women's. It's a big one, right? Division I, we're excited about that. Marquette added another Division I program. We're excited about that. We have conversations going with multiple NAIA schools. We know that's really important. Like those are opportunities that exist. NAIA often will make a jump to Division II. So that's not unheard of. So we think about that often. But colleges are used to using athletics as a way to drive really high qualified individuals into their institution that are positioned to pay for at least part of their educational experience. And it can best the enrollment cliff. And so there's a hole there, right? So there is value proposition that we already have and we need to exploit it. The proposition or the changes that recommendations that the NCAA recently passed, those are more protective measures, growth measure opportunities that we can strategically put in place specifically to Division I, knowing that there could be trickles across Divisions 2 and 3.
Okay, so I hope no one gets mad at me out there. We're going to get into the changes, the recent changes, and unpack those. Before we get there, I just want to people to have this in their heads and have it locked in. In terms of who made this decision and how we arrived at this decision. It's not just the executive director of the College Swimming Coaches Association. It is committees, coalition. Tell me about that process and how we got here.
The process is just as important as the why and then what it looks like. And we can kind of cover all of that today. The initial charge, right, is to leverage the Division I championship as a tool to elevate the value of our sport within the collegiate athletics model. The change is a 2-part proposal that represents a culmination of years worth of concepts that have been vetted. We have actually, a lot of these concepts have been socialized and had conversations and recommendations dating back to 2013. That's when I was still coaching though. So we can understand that this certainly didn't happen in a vacuum and it certainly was not fast. It was a proposal that was developed with the input of coaches, media partners, industry leaders. It has letter of endorsements from USA Swimming, from USA Diving, from ASCA, from production that works on behalf of ESPN. We work directly with individuals that are experts that have been in the USA Swimming space and the world aquatic space that are at ESPN currently, decision makers to decide who gets media equity for championships. So it's a pretty all-encompassing process. But I think, that's the broad brush sweep, Mel. I think if we talk about this specific proposal, it really got to work in earnest probably at the turn of the calendar year. We ran an industry leaders meeting in February at NCAA headquarters. CSCAA went out to Seattle. We met with the coaches at the Division I championship in March. We had open town halls in April. And all along, we're socializing these concepts, right? In May at our annual meetings, We talked about this at a deeper level. We've emailed now proposals. We've pulled feedback. We've modified. We've pulled feedback. We've done another town hall. We've socialized again. And then we handed over to the NCAA in June. In June of 2025, the NCAA has the recommendation, and it is now has to go through their processes. And the CSCAA moves on, right? We're moving on to building a dual meet championship, building an advocacy council, doing a Division III Hall of Fame, starting a diving subcommittee. Like, we're doing all of these other things that help fill the bucket of our second pronged strategic approach to the current landscape. The NCAA process has to play out. So it first goes through a first round of voting by the NCAA Swimming and Diving Committee. And then it's set to go to a final vote in August. And I think this is where things kind of get maybe a little misunderstood. There's another vote that is scheduled to happen in August on this proposal. And ideally, it either passes or fails in August. I mean, that is what anybody would hope because it's in advance of the season, right? In the meantime, the NCAA Division I changes their governance structure. And this proposal, along with probably a dozen others across all sports, are pushed to this new governance structure to evaluate in September. And that's where the new committee ultimately makes the decision. The NCAA committee ultimately makes the decision to adopt the proposal and move it forward. And so I think that's generally the process. It also includes a whole bunch of one-on-one personal opportunities to provide feedback, collect ideas, do surveys. We ran meetings with conferences. So like a Big Ten coaches conference, an SEC coaches conference meeting, trying to make sure like that this was well vetted and understood and questions could be asked and we could pull feedback. But because decisions are stronger when there's dialogue around them. And so like that ultimately we want that to be the process, right? And so now here we are. The season has started and the NCAA has made the change and we are now catching up a bit, right?
Okay. We got to get into the nitty gritty of this because everyone's like, this comes down to what I lost and what I gained. Whenever you have change, I think people want change desperately, but as soon as you have change, they get very, very angry. It really comes down to B finals and not being swum at night, and then the conference qualifications. Power four coaches, athletes are saying, hey, we could lose some faster swimmers at home because someone they qualified winning their conference and in another conference. Swimming's a meritocracy, and that kind of goes against our ethos. We're like, hey, wait a minute, how's this going to look? The comments on SwimSwam just blew up. They were rapid and they were intense. How do how did we arrive at no B finals and push back on the argument? Hey, couldn't you shuffle around that schedule a little more, moving diving here and there, moving the awards in different places? How did we get to the point where we lost our B finals at night?
Okay, I'm going to break down how the format got to where it was, but the comments on SwimSwam, the feedback from coaches, it's valuable. I mean, we have to have it, like, right? And so I put that out there in a vulnerable moment, but I think it's really important that we have conversations like this, and the platform that you can provide for that is a valuable one. I think if we try to break down the two-part proposal, we should do it in just that way, right? First, the format, and then the qualification process. So the format was designed to be broadcast friendly. And so we pulled broadcast media experts to the table, people who have actually put events on. They do it for a living, that they either work directly with ESPN, our ESPN, or have put other successful swimming and diving events on television for entertainment purposes, fast swimming purposes. The new format is built to make quicker evenings, make sure that every time somebody is touching a water, a national title is at stake, right? We want opportunities that are built in for storytelling and spotlighting and on-deck interviews. This is what we're looking for. And what we've learned is that media equity is really important, not just because we want to be on TV and capture some new and young and curious viewers and potentially people who might learn to love our sport. And that is, by the way, really important. But there's other things that are left on the table if we are not going past after some level of media equity for our sport. There's sponsorships and value, that's real value that is left on the table. And if you remember going back to what I said is like, we have to understand the value metrics that are in place for the decision makers on conference and campus levels. And so we have to try to align there where we can without giving up who we are as a sport, but also understand we might need to try to meet some of those value metrics. An updated format gives us better exposure. It makes the championship accessible to watch, entertaining. These things are important, easy to follow, open to new fans. And I think we need to understand, like, the goal is not to take away B finals, but could you imagine a space where we are going after some of the eyes that are on gymnastics or the Frozen Four or wrestling? Now swimming has changed in a way that we are stronger than we've ever been. Okay. We are too valuable to be ignored like that. We need to go after those really ambitious goals and put ourselves in a spot where eventually we're driving towards sponsorship and attendance and engagement and long-term fandom. I don't think anybody wants to lose consoles. I certainly don't. I can imagine that every swimmer, every coach doesn't want to lose them. I don't know that they're gone, forever, but I also think it's really important to understand what we're trying to go after in the near term and knowing that change isn't forever. I think it's also really important to say these athletes are valuable. They're talented. They're high performers. Their points are valuable. They're still All-Americans. And I know that's not enough. It's never enough, but all of these things were part of the consideration process. And I'm happy to break down the formatting puzzle if you like.
Break down the formatting puzzle. Give it to us.
Okay, so when we worked with ESPN, essentially what they do is they give you a timestamp, and this is all new to me as well, by the way. They give you a timestamp for every event. And that event is from the time the athletes walk out, they get on the block, they run their race, they celebrate after. And so, for the 100 fly, for example, I think it's like 6 or 7 minutes for that experience, right? And then they tell you, we need the last 3 or 4 days, day 3 and 4 actually need to be somewhere around 80 minutes, 85 minutes. And you have these timestamps that with each event, you need to put the fastest, most compelling events on the last day. And you try to build it out from there while also integrating some of the nuances of our sport that we know, right? We don't want the mile and the 500 on back-to-back days. We know the mile isn't preferred on the last day. So where does it really fit in? And so the puzzle is built out that way, but the objective is getting the fastest events on the last 2 days, meeting a time constraint, I think of 80 to 85 minutes, and understanding that each event has a specific timestamp. So there's only so many viable options to put out there. But that was part of the puzzle of building it out. And, it didn't leave a whole lot of opportunities for us to insert additional swimming. We knew that B finals were really important. We looked at running them after. We were told no, because TV doesn't want to go off the air and then have points left on the board. Then we looked at running them as a third session in the middle of the day. And it was actually one of the proposals that was socialized with the coaches. We actually got a lot of negative feedback on that, by the way, where coaches were like, I don't want to split up staffs. We don't want to run 3 sessions, exhausting athletes from going back to the pool, back and forth from the pool and the hotel 3 times they felt was not ideal. And so we really tried to listen to the coaches. Now, I also understand we didn't land in a spot where everybody is happy, but what I hope people hear is that we were working in the system that we were given to meet the objectives we needed to, and also pulling feedback at the same time. In addition to that, there's no expectation that a conference championship or a season invitation would run this format. I think that's going to be uniquely decided by each conference and their coaches and administrators.
I think that having the B final in the morning and scoring it out it adds a layer of drama. But I also know that in most of our, having swum D1, some of those most emotional races happened in the B finals in the evening. And it's really about it's about the team race. It's the reason why we love college swimming is because it's not about the individual, it's about the team. And someone simply scoring in a B final meant just as much as someone winning an A final. And that was the one thing that was different about college swimming compared to the Olympic platform. And it was part of the beauty of it. But we got to go up something. I think it's fascinating that you were considering a third session in between. So it's like, hey, you need to have these points. We know the points heading into the final. Let's run a middle session, and we'll pick those points up. So when finals start, we know what that is. And it was just too much for coaches. And we oftentimes will stop and think, hey, what is the coach's life like at an NC2As? And everyone looks like they've gone through war.
I mean, I wish I knew. I mean, I coached for over 10 years and I've only ever was a coach there once. And so these are exceptional, talented human beings that we have to rely on.
You know, there were a couple of questions on this topic that bubbled up from editorial staff because I said, hey, I'm going to talk to Sam. What can I ask her? They were pretty pointed. One of them was, this is a dramatic change. Okay, fine. A great change. We're going to change it up and we're really going to go for a TV friendly slam bang finals. Are we going to be able to see the metrics on this? Will they be shared publicly? Would the College Swimming Coaches Association, disclose, hey, we had it this was our first season. We had this dramatic change. This is what it netted us. Our viewership was higher, ran faster, social media engagement was more intense. Are there metrics that you can share? And would you agree to share them after this NCAA championships?
So I think ideally we all want to have that information. Right? Information is power. So the CSCAA doesn't actually collect those. That's collected by ESPN and the NCAA. And so working to understand those data points from media partners in the NCAA, I mean, we are committed to being open and transparent and understanding what's worked here and what hasn't and where we need to adjust moving forward. Like that's part of the process, right? The idea is that the changes are made for 2026 at Georgia Tech and then put into linear in 2027 at Texas, where it's run there for 2 straight years. Yeah, I mean, I think we want to know that. But we also have to remember we don't have any starting data because we're not a linear event so far. So points of comparison and understanding relative and absolute data will be hard to draw hard conclusions on. But yeah, we all want that data so we can make strategic and well-informed decisions on how to advance forward. And if this isn't the right format, then what is? And we want everyone to be part of that.
I know that you can get. I know that we'll have data, and I know there's ways to track social engagement during it because it's not just going to be ESPN and viewership there and how long people watched before they punched out, or did they watch the first day and then they didn't watch the second day, or just watch the third day, or maybe they only dropped in and watched one event.
Yeah, we want ESPN to give up. Yeah, perfect. We all want it.
But it's interesting that it's like you're going to be in a process of cobbling together this data. You're going to be chasing this data at the College Swimming Coaches Association to share with everyone, share with your stakeholders, and so you can make decisions going forward. That's fascinating. That sounds like a lot of work, but we'll be supportive where we can be. But we do. I would like to have a moment where we pull the data and then we say, hey, this is the net result. I do believe there's a starting point. We have historic data up until now and what it's been. So this sounds like a revisit. So that was the one question from our some editorial. Mm-hmm. The other question was, and this was kind of interesting to me. It's like, hey, if there's a financial bump, who benefits from that financial bump? Is ESPN going to benefit from that financial bump? Could we get sponsors?
Yeah. So I think ESPN and the NCAA just had a $920 million media rights deal that went into effect last September. It'll go through 2032. Part of that is they have the rights to 40 championships, exclusive rights to 40 championships, including men and women's swimming and diving championships. And so that's part of that. They also have corporate championship sponsors that help with the cost of the championships as sponsors, but they have the opportunity to opt into more. And the way to get them to opt into more is become more visible, become more popular, do all the things that, sponsors are looking for, right? I think there's about 600 billion of that money is allocated to go back to institutions, right? In distributions. And then it's up to institutions then to distribute out for things like revenue share and where they're going to revenue share and what that could look like. But these are all things across all sports that the NCAA conference offices, member institutions are looking at when they're understanding the value of a sport. The the dollars out and the dollars in.
In terms of, just as a note to everybody in there, you said $920 billion in total rights. That's the 2032. I imagine swimming slice of that pie would be very, very small. Yeah, extremely small. Do you know what that number is? And do you know what that number is?
I don't know.
Is there a way that we could find it or where we could chase that? Who decides that? Is it based entirely just on our viewership? Do we have to jockey for it and prove with our ratings during the NCAA championships how much that share is?
So the answer is I need to find out for sure more how that is broken down sports by sport. What we're trying to do is understand that there is 40 NCAA Division I Championships on the table, and getting them for ESPN and getting airtime for them, getting media equity for them helps bring corporate sponsors, championship sponsors to the table. And that's ultimately what we're looking for.
We have championship sponsors. I'm just wondering who makes that money. ESPN makes it in advertising dollars, but that's not going to be. It supports their media rights buy. That's ESPN revenue. So yeah, that's ESPN earning back money on their investment. I understand that creating value means that in the future, because we're looking into the future after 2032, the rights fee is going to be higher, and we get it, and then so our little piece of the pie gets bigger. That makes sense to me. So we're extending the horizon out, and that makes sense to me. Can we get into the meritocracy side of swimming and how this really upset a lot of people? Is that we could be leaving faster swimmers at home at the Power Four. Power Four coaches have grumbled in the background. Address this issue and talk to me about how it activates conference championships and is a value add, but also address the negatives and the concerns of Power Four coaches and athletes who are faster who are going to stay at home.
Yeah. So the updated qualification system is designed to broaden access to the championship without impacting or having marginal impacts to team scoring and our most high performers at the NCAA championship. So that's one. But the reason you do it, right, is because we want to make sure that there is a higher value placed back on conference championships and campuses, right? So currently, Mel, I know you'll check my math on this, but I think Power Four institutions on the men's side make up roughly around 30% of our entire Division I body, and they take up about 93% of the championship field. On the women's side, Power Four takes up about, I think, 25% of the overall membership, and I think they are about 91% of the championship field size, roughly. Okay. But we can understand where we're going with that. These numbers have been consistent over time, and the conversation around access and representation, it's certainly not new. I referenced the feasibility study that dates back to 2013 that's come out of the CSCAA around this. But what's different today in making this change is the urgency. The evolving landscape that is college swimming and diving is under threatened system. So we need to make sure that the change can feel like a challenge for sure, and making sure that our sport is unique because of the clear cut lines in time. So we also have to consider that uniqueness alone doesn't increase our value. So how can we stay true to who we are, but also increase our value? The championship field size is linked to sponsorship. So if Division I championship decreases by 10%, you can expect that the field size is also going to decrease. So we need to protect the championship field size so those spots become available for everyone. We all love a Cinderella story, and I know that was part of the conversation about why this happened, but the bigger goal is to ensure that athletic directors nationwide see real opportunities for championship access. Learfield points, can they be in striking distance? Is there an opportunity for national recognition without negatively impacting our top teams? Those are strategic moves to make sure that teams across the country have a better value proposition and that we're not losing teams on campus. Cal Poly would have had 2 people in, I think, if we had this in place last year. I can't promise it would have saved the program, but I can promise it would have made it a whole lot harder to eliminate the program, right? And so Cal and Stanford are stronger because Cal Poly exists.
I hate this, and I love it. Personally, I hate it. I really hate it. The idea that you're faster and you're left at home just hurts my soul. However, there is something I do like about it. We've had such a concentration of talent at a handful of programs, top programs. I do like the idea that I could go to a mid-major with an exceptionally talented coach, and I could be that athlete that has a better shot at going to NC2As. And maybe we'll develop, can get to NC2A. Maybe they wouldn't get to NC2As their freshman, sophomore year at a top 20 university. But at a D1 mid-major, they could get there their freshman, sophomore year and develop into their junior, senior year. I like that story. I like that trajectory. That makes sense to me. I like spreading that talent would be incentivized to spread around a little more. I do like that. But it's difficult to get past that a faster swimmer might be left at home. This is going to be interesting to see how this works. Something that some of our editorial staffs was discussing was like, hey, in terms of this decision-making process, how many Power 4 coaches had a voice in this decision? Were they represented at all? Or were they just like, this in committee is, the committees were made up of people who have no stake in the Power 4, and they just unilaterally made this decision. How well represented was Power 4 when this decision was made?
Okay, so the CSCAA board, by the way, is made up of about 16 members. And on that board, currently, we've got Cincinnati, Louisville, Northwestern, Princeton, Richmond, Fresno State, Texas, Grand Canyon, UCLA, and UIC. So those are the Division I schools. And all of them have experience at the NCAA championship. The NCAA new governance structure that's in place, members for the first time ever, they're student athletes that are voting on proposals just like this and including this one. And that includes 4 representatives from Power 4 conferences. Those are automatic seats that cannot be taken away, and they get a weighted voice. So if Power 4 comes into a recommendation and they all band together to agree or disagree to any recommendation that is put forward, they ultimately have the final say. 4 representatives come from the highest ranked non-autonomy conferences. So think your institutions that have had the most success at the NCAA championship. There's 2 at-large spots for swimming. There's 2 dedicated diving spots. And there's 3 student athlete spots. So student athletes' voice represents about 20% of the voting. And then there's a rules editor and a coaches association seat that are non-voting that are at the table. So that's the committee. That's who votes.
No, that was my follow-up. Student athletes, because a lot of people are like, hey, we're student athletes consulted on this. And you're saying that there were 4 Power 4 student athletes. And if they band together, their vote is actually weighted. Is that incorrect?
No, there's 4 Power 4 seats that'll go to a coach or an administrator. And then there's 3 student athlete seats. That's a male athlete, a female athlete, and a diving athlete.
Okay. So there is representation, and it's more than people would guess. A lot of people felt that there was 0 representation from the Power 4. That was alleged.
Well, and it's okay, but here's what we want is we want everyone's voice. Like going back to what I said before, our decisions are stronger when there's dialogue, and we want the strongest voices. And I'll tell you that, we understand the dissent. I want to hear it. I want to understand it. I want to account for it. We've also had a lot of calls come in that either said, thank you, or this is a great first step. I know there are people who feel like we're stepping off a cliff. I also know there are people that feel like we're taking the first step up a mountain.
I can't wait to see what ESPN does, so that we've made this dramatic change. We've made their life certainly a whole lot easier for this telecast. I worked for ESPN. I was a full-time employee for ESPN, had my own show, worked after the Olympics through the 1990s. And that was a wonderful experience. But I also know that on the television side and the production side, it's, let's just say, economies of scale. ESPN is producing an enormous amount of sport. I'm wondering if they're going to make more of an investment. They're going to put more elbow grease on this because we're giving them what they want, but what are they going to do with it? That's my biggest question. It's like, hey, we got your feedback, but it's so much easier and it's a lot more fun to do this format for a telecast and for your job in the evening. I would like to know, what is ESPN bringing to the table? Are they bringing more to the table? Are they going to, and this is what an investment looks like from ESPN, just so everybody's listening can understand this. It means that they actually go out and do production. They go and they capture the biggest stories of what they think is going to happen in NC2As, stories that they can package, produce, that are high impact, and then they can roll throughout the competition to increase engagement. Do we have any assurances that ESPN would be changing how they produce the championships?
Well, I mean, ultimately, that is what we're going for, right? And so when we're asking them, and by the way, and they weigh in to the NCAA and say, we fully, support these changes, and we've had conversations with them, and we're here to push the envelope. Yeah, I mean, I'm not ESPN, so I can't guarantee their next move, but everything was done with them in consultation.
It was done with them in consultation, but my guess is that no one on our side had media training, has ever produced a television show, knows what it actually means to produce that product, because I can throw the same time, dollars, and bodies at a production, or I can throw new talent, more money. And so, yes, my question is, how do we hold ESPN's feet to the fire? Because it sounds like we've rushed to make this change because we're driven by fear. We know we have to evolve, but it really does come down to ESPN has to do this.
Yeah, we need ESPN to come to the table. They have told us what they need. And look, right, I've never produced something for TV, but that's why we brought people into the task force that have and are and know and have the know-how.
So we have people in the task force that have this knowledge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to hear from them. I'd like to know what they're discussing behind the scenes, because the production could be very interesting. I would like to see a lift on the ESPN side. In terms of commercialization and the stakes, this was just an unusual question, and editorial asked this, will there be any new rev sharing or fund distribution models tied to these changes? Should there be? And should there be? If not, should there be?
I mean, my personal opinion is that any athlete who's competing at this level should get revenue share. We have to create more revenue in than we're spending out. Without it, we're revenue sharing in the negative, which doesn't work. So, but I think what people need to understand about revenue, if they don't already, and I imagine most of your listeners are fully immersed in this conversation, is that the revenue sharing that is existing comes directly from the schools to the athletes, and the general best practice for revenue sharing at the moment, and it's not an exact science, is about 75, 15, 5, 5. So 75% goes to football, 15 to men's basketball, 5 to women's basketball, 5% for all other sports combined. Do the math on that with your $920 million and rights. Yeah, that with what ESPN paid. So it's Braden, Keith, Daniel, you guys are out there listening. We need to bring in our PhDs in math to pencil this out. We've covered a lot here, and I've gone a little bit over an hour with you, and also know that you're traveling and that your life has gotten way more interesting and dynamic as the new executive director of College Community Coaches Association. Our previous executive directors, I don't know that it was quite as intense. On a personal standpoint, do you feel like you sort of jumped into the fire when you accepted this position? No, I don't know that I jumped into a fire. I mean, I love what I do. I work for exceptional coaches that are the best in the business and the best in many cases in the world. And so to be able to work on their behalf is an absolute privilege. And, whether they agree with this proposal or anything else we're doing, frankly, I hope they know that when they call, they're I pick up. Right. And so I feel privileged to be able to work with them. My predecessors had their own challenges, right? My initial, and just so people know who I am, and not that I don't know how many people even care, but I came from a small town in Pennsylvania. I swam at a mid-major Division I school. I coached for a little over 10 years. I was at a conference office, and then I was brought into the association by a gentleman named Joel Schinelfeld. He was the person who hired me. Greg Earhart was my immediate predecessor. He was my first boss. When he left, I was asked to apply, and I said no. I was asked again, and then under the leadership of our presidents at the time, Clark Campbell at Kansas, Mandy at Cincinnati, Matt Crispino at Princeton, an outside consultant that we work with, that's who hires me. And I report to our board, but our board represents our membership. So am I in the fire? Yes. Am I privileged to be in the fire? Absolutely. Since we're getting into your lifestyle and how you got here, how much of your time there at helming
the CSCAA, is advocacy on the Hill, lobbying. And how much has it been what we're talking about right now, and changes and filling the buckets?
Yeah. So the stuff congressionally has been, as I mentioned before, it's super ambitious. So we're spearheading with other coaches associations across all NCAA sports. And we work on with a group of 20 different sports, and we have two very distinct legislative priorities. And now this is probably also another podcast. We are going to become fast friends, I believe. One is to codify sports sponsorship minimums to make sure that broad-based sports exist on a college campus. The second is to meaningfully resource those programs so they have scholarships, salaries, equipment lines, travel budgets, all of those things, right? We know that as budgets and revenue in has changed over the past 20 years, and this is all EADA, is that some of them, in fact, have changed by 400%. The spending on those sports has remained relatively the same. So what we know as a best practice is about 30% of an athletic department's budget, if you have football, goes to 78% of the athletes on your campus. And it sounds inequitable, but it works. It works, and we need to create that baseline. So our two legislative priorities are, one, make sure you have broad-based sports, and two, make sure they're meaningfully resourced. And again, our work on the Hill is a lot of education, making leeway. We've had actual text put into some of the bills. So we feel really, we're working with a government relations firm, and we feel very, very strongly this cannot be ignored. The other piece, the bucket around making sure swimming and diving is safe, and strong and positioned for a really long, healthy future. That also has to happen. We can't do one without the other. They're hand in glove. And so if we're building out a dual meet championship to run a concept of what the future championship could be like, that's to strengthen our sport. If we're building out an advocacy council of individuals to help lead our decision-making around advocacy, that's to ensure the health of our sport. If we're doing a Division III Hall of Fame, that's for the health of our sport. If we're working with NAIA, that's for the health of our sport. So if we're not doing one of those two things, then I'm sleeping.
I know you're not sleeping. I know you're very, very busy. How busy your life is. And we appreciate the work. I think for most people that are listening to this, they know that this is happening, and I think that everyone has different emotions about it because change is always emotional, and there's a lot of fear behind it. I think people are going to really want to know the metrics. I think they want to know who's going to audit this, and how is that all going to be aggregated so that we can be reviewed, and we can give ourselves a report card and make our decision based on raw numbers. Is that fall entirely on your shoulders? Is it going to be, will someone else audit that at the NCAA?
So it will be on us to work with the NCAA to get that information.
Okay. And I'm kind of looking at a horizon on how long it would take to get that information. Normally in business, you're going to be parsing that within weeks after NCAAs. How long do you think it'd be before we would see it? Before the base would see it? Before all the stakeholders would see it and be like, it's public and we can take a look at it and say, hey, this was a win, this was a loss, this was flat. Can you?
As I get information, right, that can be verified, I'll share it.
Okay.
Right? Because there's nothing to hide here, right? If this is not the right step, then we need to quickly adjust and modify. So we can't hide behind anything, right? If we all are responsible for nurturing this thing forward.
We're going to hold you to that because we want the content on Swim Swam whenever we can get it, because we want to shake this out. I appreciate you coming on. Did we cover everything? Is there anything that I didn't cover that you might want to cover?
No, I think there is, the only thing I would want people to know is that we work on behalf of the coaches, and the coaches' voices matters. They are the practitioners. When you say make the main thing matter, keep the main thing, they are the main thing, And so that doesn't mean everybody's going to like every decision, but, we understand who we work for. We believe in them, and we're available to them. And if this isn't the perfect right step forward, and no one's suggesting it's the silver bullet, we're going to ask them to come back to the table and help us get this right.
been talking to my staff, and it seems like everything was buttoned around this one question, which I think that you've belabored this point. If this doesn't work, it's risky. We think it's risky because we've never tried it before, and there's pushbacks, and the metrics don't show, aren't positive. It sounds to me like you're ready to react and change and pivot and evolve because the stakes are so high.
Yeah, Mel, I think that's right. How risky is it?
I mean, right now, I think that you have to take a risk. I think if you don't I don't think if college swimming takes a risk, college swimming and diving doesn't take a risk, we're in danger of 40 more.
So in this seat, I have to think about it. We live in a world of probability, right? And the probability of growth without evolution is minimal.
I'm going to end here because I want to have another podcast. I think this will be a more meaningful topic, actually, for people who care about the sport and care about college swimming and diving and its future. I'd like to get into the dollars and cents. And I think I'm on the chopping block. And I've got to, if I really want to secure my program, what's that dollar figure? How does that, what does that look like? What is the breakdown? What does it cost to support my program? What does it cost to endow it, which is a step up? And then I'd like to cover if you've learned any information in terms of steps you can take to reach that 20 million or the higher million to endow. And are there any test cases where it's been done at other universities?
So it's cheaper to keep a program than it is to bring a program back. And we've got awesome fundraisers in swimming.
Well, we're going to have a follow-up conversation about that. Are you prepared to come back?
I will come back.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you talking to us.
It's excellent. Thank you.